Good old retail Fortnite's most iconic POIs, being there since Season 0, as well as one of my personal favorite drop spots in Reload. Hi, I'm the pair himself, and I dropped at Retail Row 20 times in Fortnite Reload, and this is what happened. Alright, hopping into Game 1, and Retail was pretty far away, which makes sense, it is at the corner of the map. But that means I didn't really get to choose where I land, which is kind of a problem with landing, again, somewhere at the corner. However, it did land me at the housing areas, which is where I like to land. Now you see, retail is divided into two areas, a shopping area and a housing area. I personally prefer the housing area because it has more chests and thus gives you a better chance at finding a good weapon, like this legendary hammer AR I found. Now at this point I heard fighting in front of me and behind me. I decided to head to the fighting in front of me, which landed me at Sandy Sheets. Now I hope you like Sandy Sheets because I'll be going there a lot throughout this video. And that's mostly due to where it is on the map. It's one of the two POIs that's close to retail, the only other one being Lazy Lamps. But unlike Lazy, it's further up, which means it's usually in the circle. Now in this match I just went there because I heard players fighting and lo and behold, there was someone there. And using the legendary hammer AR I managed to find, I actually got a kill on it, which ended up giving me a purple striker bump, which would serve as a lesson for the rest of the video. If you still have your reboots, then you should probably try to go for kills, because not only does that eliminate other players in the match, but it can also end up giving you really good loot. Now after that, I headed to one of the taco buildings near the lake. You know, the ones with the vending machines inside, that always have people in them for some reason. Yeah, no, this match was no different. There were like 8 different people going there. It was wild. I entered with 1 kill and ended up exiting with 9. I really don't get why those places are so popular. But if you're looking for kills, that's a good place to get some. After leaving the taco place, I mostly spent my time around Tilted. Not in Tilted, since I knew there'd be really good players there, but around Tilted, since I knew that the circle would eventually close. Now during this time, I usually spent it getting myself a few kills here and there, but mostly just waiting to see what would happen. That was until some Jack Skellington showed up and ended up shooting me with a mammoth pistol, which then forced me to go into Tilted to be able to heal myself. Going into Tilted ended up landing me in the top 3. Not only top 3, but top 3 with a view of another player, which ended up being the view of the 2 other players when the Jack Skellington rushed them. Now, personally, I'd usually just wait for them to kill each other and then rush in to see what happened, but it took so long that we were all forced out of our positions, eventually into an open field. At this point, it was total chaos, with the 3 of us trying to kill each other, and Emma Frost, the other player I talked about earlier, ended up killing the Jack Skellington, after which I actually managed to kill the Emma, which means that somehow I actually managed to win Game 1 of this challenge. Alright, loading up into Game 2, retail was a pretty hot drop, with it being right at the end of the bus path. Meaning that this time I actually had to fight other people. I also actually landed at the shopping section instead of the housing area. Now I said the housing area is better, but I still wanted to try landing at the shopping area some games. Anyway, despite being contested, I managed to fight everybody off. Though that's mostly to me finding a purple mammoth pistol in my first chest that I opened. Though I should add that retail is usually this contested, it's just that for my first game I left it early. Speaking of which, after this, I spent most of my time outside of retail, mostly getting into fights and getting kills and such. After a while, I decided to head into Tilted, where I managed to find myself a genuine default. Not only that, but after killing him, I actually got a purple pump. A quick zero build tip here for me, don't do what I do here. If you don't have an SMG in zero build, you usually don't want to carry a pump, because you usually want to have something to follow up the pump shot. Technically use an AR to follow it up, but it's better to use an SMG or just use an auto shotgun like the TAC, since that way you don't really have to switch up. But if you want to use the pump, then it's better to use a pump and an SMG. This is a terrible game to get that advice in because I actually managed to get into the final circle, where I watched 2 people get killed from afar while missing every single shot, at which point I was rushed by a Chrome Punk, who I killed and brought the game down to a 1v1. And for me, he had to come to me, meaning I got a few free shots on him. Though he did just use the shockwave to bridge the gap at that point, at which point I drew my own earlier advice wrong and used a pump shot followed up by AR shots to kill him and win the game. Game 3, and retail was full of bots. The whole game was full of bots, actually. I don't know why, but there were a lot, and I do mean a lot of bots. Which basically means I got free kills the entire game. Though that doesn't mean there weren't any real players, because there were some. Mostly around Sandy for some reason. And interestingly, one of those players actually dropped Jules' Mythic Grappler, which I thought was pretty neat. Yeah, there wasn't really a lot going on this game. At the Snobby, got a kill, then reboots got disabled, and then I got into a fight. And though I won the fight, I was pretty injured and got killed. Makes this the first death of the video. So as a consolation prize, I got 24 kills. Even if most of them were probably bots. Loading up into game 4, and it was terrible. You could tell it was terrible because I genuinely forgot that I was playing the game. I was only reminded of such because I got kicked off the bus. But luckily for me, retail was just at the end of the bus path, so I still landed there. Also, I'm still wearing the Iron Spider skin, by the way. I usually like to switch skins between games to be able to differentiate them. Because I just readied up for this one instead of going back to the lobby, I'm still wearing Iron Spider for it. But even ignoring the fact that I forgot that I was playing the game, this game still sucked. I got 1 kill at retail, which was nice, I guess. Then I headed to Tilted, where I died. At which point I went to Loot Lake, where I died again. At which point I tried to land at a random isolated cabin that had someone in it, and you can guess, I died again. Loading up into game 5, and it was a much better game, because I actually remembered I was playing it. Retail was pretty far away from the bus, so it wasn't that contested by actual people, mostly just bots. And I'm only mentioning that because one of them used the rocket launcher, and I did not know they could do that. After that, I spent most of my time between Tilted and Sandy getting into fights, before I got into a fight that ended up killing me. A quick reload tip for all of you is that even if you do die in reload, it doesn't mean that you're completely screwed, since you can still charge up something decent. For example, in this match, I respawned near Lone Lodge and still managed to get myself a shotgun and SMG, which allowed me to get a few kills to get better loot. Also, quick side note, I got a burst AR this game, and I just gotta say that I absolutely love this thing. It's genuinely fantastic. Also, another reload tip, if you're playing zero build, don't get into a fight right before reboots end, because if you get into a fight and you break your overshield, you're not getting the bonus overshield, dude. Now down to a top 3 situation, and I try to pick a fight and get completely destroyed. At which point I try running away and run into the other guy, which completely screws me over. So I decide to run away, and somehow I actually managed to do it, and heal myself up too. So then I decide, you know what, I'm gonna go hide on top of one of the buildings, because that way I won't have to fight anyone. And then when I go on top of one of the buildings, there's a superhero skin waiting there for me. And I actually managed to kill him, bringing this to a 1v. At which point I get rushed by 1 ball, kill him too, winning the game. Loading up into game 6, and there really wasn't anything interesting about it. The only things of note are a guy who only used a purple Ranger AR, and I know where he got that Ranger AR from. There were shotguns right there. Well, I don't know why he didn't pick them up. And later on, I ended up fighting the worst sniper I've ever seen, which was interesting. I actually ended up rushing him right when reboot ended and killed him. And then got promptly rushed myself and died. Game 7 was just bad. I got skill issued by a guy and then died twice in a row because of the fact that I didn't have any actual weapons or shields. Game 8 started pretty alright. Retail wasn't too contested, so I only left it with a few kills. I then headed up to that area between Lone Lodge and Snobby, where I ended up dying. And then when I respawned near Tilted. And like a professional random squad member, I saw a guy kill someone, took all the good loot they had, purple pump and a purple havoc AR, and then immediately ran away. I did circle back to Tilted where I killed a guy and ended up getting a legendary pump, and shortly after I ended up dying myself. Game 9 started off great. I got a legendary hammer AR from my second chest. Wasn't so great after I had to fight 3 people back to back and ended up dying and losing it. And to rub salt in the wound, I ended up losing in second place to the guy that killed me using my hammer AR. Yeah, I was pretty pissed about that, not gonna lie. Game 10 and I was desperate for a win, especially without the last game in. You can tell because I ended up putting on my main skin. For this game, I mostly stuck to the lower side of the map, since going up might mean going to Snobby, and going to Snobby usually means me dying. I also ended up using 2 playstyles for this game. For the first half, I played really aggressive, basically going to every fight that I heard or saw. And for the second half, I played mostly cowardly, if I'm being honest. Since, and here's a tip if you're playing solo, and especially if you're playing zero build, getting into fights in the late game where there are only a few people left and the storm circle is small is usually a death sentence, since that means you'll be on low health, and most people will know where you are, making you an easy target. Though I guess I wasn't the only one with the idea to hide, because someone rushed in my bush and ended up killing me. I respawned at retail, which I think is pretty ironic, and at this point I thought it was over. Though by playing strategically and avoiding fights, by hiding in the buildings in retail and then hiding in the bush, I actually managed to work my way up into a top 3 situation. The storm did force me to shockwave away, though because I shockwaved away, the other 2 players ended up fighting between themselves and brought it down to a 1v1. At which point I shockwaved back, and somehow, despite having pretty garbage loot, ended up winning the match. It serves as a lesson that at the end of the day, strategy is and always will be one of the most important factors to winning a match. Game 11 was pretty uneventful. Only one other person landed at retail and I killed them. Then 2 other people came in retail later and I killed them too. And then just outside of retail I killed another guy. And I'm telling you all these kills because these are the only kills I got for this entire game. And this was at the halfway point of my recording. The only things of note from this match are A, I went to Lazy Laps for the first time, so that's pretty neat I guess. And B, by hiding in the Tilted Towers basement, I managed to get to top 4, and when the storm forced me out, it became a top 3, at which point I died. Game 12 was luckily a lot more interesting. Retail was actually contested this time, meaning I actually got into fights. Most interesting, this genuine player who had an auto shotgun and lost an up-close fight against me, while I only had spray weapons. After that fighting, I headed up to Sandy and eventually to Snobby. I was then reminded why I don't go to Snobby, because I died. I then respawned at Sandy and immediately started to fight again. Don't ask me why I was so aggressive, but I was. Though that aggression did come back to bite me because I got killed once again. After that, I respawned right outside of Snobby and mostly hid, to be honest. I did try to pick a fight, but the guy ran away, which was actually a positive since that showed me where the rest of the lobby was, which was at Snobby. I then used my strategic mind to come up with a great plan of just hiding in the bush that's right next to the hill at Snobby, while everyone else fought. Then I waited until the top 3, and when I heard gunshots, I grappled up to a bunker that was at Snobby. At which point, the Chaos Agent there turned this into a 1v1. I rushed him, though he did try to run away with the shockwave, but I managed to chase him down and have a proper 1v1, which I ended up winning. Loading up into Game 13, and retail was packed. There were so many people there, and a lot of them were actually real this time. After that, I headed over to Sandy, where I killed a guy and got a legendary hammer yarn. This game I managed to get to the part where reboots are disabled without dying once, which meant I had both of my reboots. But because I took damage beforehand, I didn't get the full 150 overshield. Made it to top 4 where my back was to the storm, so I had to rush a guy, killed him, and then died immediately after. Loading up into Game 14 in retail was pretty full, which allowed me to show off my absolutely amazing hand cannon skills. And after publicly embarrassing myself on the internet, I have made what can only be called the worst play with a shockwave ever. Then, after that, I went to Sandy, where I immediately died. After that, I respawned at Tilted, at which point I looted a single house and dipped immediately, because I know that Tilted is tilted. After that, I went to one of the huts with the vending machine right outside of Tilted, where I got into a fight, because those huts always have someone, and I genuinely don't know why. I then almost got killed while trying to open an airdrop, but managed to run away and bunker up, which allowed me to kill both an unrelated guy and the guy that was trying to kill me. I then headed back to retail where I killed 2 different people with 2 different legendary assault rifles, which is kind of neat, I guess. I then hid in one of the houses at retail until it was the top 3. I then went outside to take a look after hearing gunshots, at which point it was down to a 1v1. I rushed the guy with a crash pad, but he ran away with a shotgun. I then rushed at him with another crash pad, and after getting jump scared by him firing at me, managed to get myself the win. Game 15 was definitely something. I got a few kills and then died. Then I respawned, got another kill, and died again. Then I respawned again, got some more kills, and died again. Game 16 in retail was decently contested. Managed to kill 3 people before dying myself and respawning over at Dusty Docks. Which I'd like to mention that Dusty is my personal favorite reload POI. There, I ended up getting killed by Billie Eilish. I then respawned and killed her back, at which point she respawned and landed on top of me, and we both ended up killing each other. Now, what I think makes this interesting is that neither of us had reboots left, meaning we ended up wiping each other from the game. Game 17 consisted mostly of me getting screwed over. I lost both of my reboots because I was third party either after a fight or during a fight. And despite that, I managed to get myself to the final circle. And that was mostly by hiding, though that hiding did come back to bite me after a superhero skin rushed into my bush, found me, and promptly killed me. Game 18, and I spent the whole game either in retail or around retail. And somehow, despite that, I still managed to rack up 10 kills. I actually managed to get into the top 5 where I went to that weird mountain thing right outside of retail. But unfortunately, it was taken up by the storm. So I had to move into retail. But unfortunately, retail was also taken up by the storm. And unfortunately for me, everywhere that had cover had another player there waiting for me. And because of that, I ended up dying. Alright, loading up into game 19, and I ended up finding myself an exotic dub shotgun. Now, this shotgun's pretty funny for memes and stuff, but as an actual shotgun, it is genuinely terrible. And it's probably the reason why I got killed. After dying, I respawned back at retail and actually managed to get into the top 3. Now at this point, I was trying to do my classic strategy of wait for the other 2 to kill each other and then go in. Though, unfortunately for me, the moving storm circle complicated things. And I ended up getting spotted, and though I lived, I lost most of my shields. And while I was popping minis, the other 2 players fought, and the one ball came out victorious, bringing it down to a 1v. And unfortunately for me, he was just better at the game than me and ended up killing me. And finally, we go into game 20. I think this challenge has truly cemented retail as my favorite residential area, even surpassing my old favorites of Greasy Grove and Holly Hedges. It being divided into 2 very distinct areas makes it very unique in my eyes, and I'm kind of sad that it's overshadowed by Pleasant Park as the residential area of Reload. The challenge also ended up surprising me with how well I played. Like, I thought I wouldn't have a win in the first 5 games, but I ended up winning the first one. Though with that being said, you can tell here that I very much wanted to end off this video on a win. I was playing very reserved and only getting into fights that I needed to. Though that doesn't mean I didn't get into any fights, just less fights than I usually do. That being said, I managed to get into the top 5 by finding the perfect hiding spot. Like this house somehow managed to get into the storm circle up until the top 5. From there, I mostly just stayed back and up until the top 3 where I had to shockwave away from the storm. And ended up going right in front of an enemy player, where I then shockwave away and ended up right in front of a hope, where I then also shockwave away. Now, this made the other 2 players engage with each other, bringing this into a top 2. I then shockwave back and won the 1v1 to get my final win in game 20. And that was 20 drops at Retail Row. I hope you guys enjoyed this because I'm planning to do more 20 or 100 drops. Yeah, that's all that I have to say. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Bye-bye.